Welcome into Bracket Buster Breakdown. On Sunday, we gave the immediate reactions to the bracket coming out. Now that it has digested for the past 48 hours, it is time to get into the actual predictions for this bracket. And let me tell you, this bracket still sucks. I said it on Sunday. I'll say it again today. This bracket still quite awful. But you know what? We're going to get into it. We're going to get through it. We are going to find a national champion for you, the viewers. So let's just get this underway. We're going to go region by region. At the Elite Eight, we're going to stop. That will be saved till the end. And then we'll do Elite Eight, Final Four, National Champion. Just all nice and combined together. So let's start off with the East region. It is the number one overall seed. That is the UConn Huskies region. This region will be played in Boston. I believe it is the Thursday, Saturday for the regional. Obviously, all these games can be within that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday range for the first and second rounds. But let's get into this. So we're going to start off, of course, at the top, the number one seed, UConn Huskies, going up against the number 16 seed, Stetson Hatters. They are out of the A-Sun. They won the conference tournament. They were the 2 seed, I believe. They barely made it past the 6 seed, I believe it was, in the championship, Austin Peay. But here we are. Stenson probably has the toughest challenge in this tournament, which is going up against probably the best team in college basketball so far this year. And that is, of course, the UConn Huskies. I don't really think there's much of a question here on how this plays out. So we'll just move on, UConn, to the second round. UConn will obviously get more in-depth breakdowns when, the competition actually is worth it. Moving on, we get to the 8-9 game. And I hate this game because I think both teams are very much overseeded, but here we are anyways. It is the number 8 seed, Florida Atlantic Owls, coming off their Final Four from last year. They're back in the tournament this year as an 8 seed, going up against the number 9 seed, Northwestern Wildcats, who are in their first back-to-back tournament of all time. Of course, they only made their debut in the NCAA tournament. I believe it was 2017 was the year. So for them to go back-to-back, that's a huge thing for this university. And here we are now. I think this is an interesting test because Florida Atlantic has just kind of they've had their moments this year. Of course, they had the win against Arizona. That game was in Las Vegas, went to overtime. They won 96-95. But they've also had their moments where they lost to, FGCU. They lost to Bryant. They lost to Temple in the tournament, the semifinals. They've had their moments. Can they replicate what they did last year? I 100% do not think so. I do not think they're going back to a Final Four. Do I think that they can win this game? I do think there's a chance for them to win. I think Northwestern has more talent. And, this obviously, Boo Booey's in his 8th year, it feels like, in college. So it kind of feels like this is his, he's playing because he knows his career's almost over. I have Northwestern advancing here. I can't see Florida Atlantic getting past this team because, especially coming off that loss to Temple, that is a tough loss to swallow. Moving on, it is the 5-12 game. This is San Diego State Aztecs, who made the national championship last year. So we have 3 of the Final Four teams in this region alone. Obviously, the 4th one was Miami, and they did not make the tournament. But hey, here we are, 3 of them in this region, but we're here to break it down, the matchup. San Diego State, I wouldn't say it's been as good of a year as they had last year. They've had their moments, kind of like FAU. They've had their moments. They beat St. Mary's. They beat Gonzaga in the non-con. But they did lose to BYU. So there's your, that's your top 25, I think it would be in the Ken Pom, because all those, not Ken Pom, the net, which is fraudulent, but here I am talking about the net anyways. UAB, they've been hot as of late. They have a lot of bad losses this year. They lost to Arkansas State. They lost to Charlotte. They lost to Wichita State. But like I said, they've been hot as of late. Do I think that can transition, into this tournament game? Of course, anything can happen. I just think, San Diego State has the more talent here. I think they end up moving on here to the second round. Auburn-Yale. Now, I've already seen a lot of people talking about this game because Auburn, they're coming off winning the SEC title. They've had a very good year this year. And they seem like a very good team. I think they have, a lot of momentum behind them. Their losses this year, the worst one is Appalachian State, and that is turning out to be a somewhat good win, even though Appalachian State did not make the tournament. They were the number 1 seed in the Sun Belt. So, it's still it's a good loss, in the worst ways, kind of one of those. But Auburn, they're still a very good team. They're number 4 in the Ken Pom right now. That team is really good. But they're going up against a Yale team who a lot of people, obviously look past this year. They gave Kansas a game on the road. And, that's saying something. I know Kansas didn't turn out to be amazing this year. They still made the tournament, though. I like the way Yale plays. I think they could give a lot of trouble to this Auburn team. I just think Auburn has a little bit too much here. And they get past this Yale team, even though I do think this one's going to be closer than expected. Moving on, we'll move on to the bottom half of this region. It is BYU going up against Duquesne. Duquesne, I don't think, should be here seeding-wise. They obviously won the A-10. They deserve to be in this tournament. I just think the committee didn't care, and obviously they ended up with this seeding going up against BYU. BYU had a disappointing showing against Texas Tech in the Big 12 tournament, but I still think that they're a very good team and can get past this Duquesne team. Now, I'm not counting out Duquesne. Their coach, Keith Danbrock, announced that he is retiring at the end of the season yesterday. So that always is going to factor in. You're going to have that coach's retirement bump. There's a possibility that plays out and, Duquesne comes out swinging. They're playing for their coach, and all of a sudden, BYU's like down 10 with 5 minutes to go, and all chaos is breaking loose. I still like BYU here. I like them moving on to the next round. Illinois, Morehead State. Illinois coming off their win of the Big Ten title, going up against Morehead State, who won the Ohio Valley Conference. I think fatigue plays a bit of a factor here for Illinois, but then too much rest plays in for Morehead State, because Morehead State was their first team to clinch their tournament berth. That was on 2 Saturdays ago. So that's a lot of time off I like Illinois for that reason, even though they just played a lot of games in obviously a lot of days. It was 3 games in 3 days for them. I still like them to win, but obviously that could play a big part there. Moving on, Washington State, who I think have been the story of this season. What Kyle Smith has done with this team is nothing short of extraordinary. Going up against Drake, the Bulldogs, DeVries, who is just an outstanding shooter. I know a lot of people wanted to see Indiana State in this tournament. They obviously didn't make it. They probably should have made it as an at-large, but hey, here we are. They aren't here. This has the potential for being one of the best games of the first round. I like both teams here. It was really hard for me to find somebody to pick because, like I said, I like both teams. I'm just going with Drake here. I feel like DeVries is going to be the key, and I think they find a way to pull it out in the end. Finally, we have Iowa State going up against South Dakota State. Now, Iowa State is one of the hottest teams in the country. They just steamrolled through the Big 12 tournament. They shut down, like big time shut down Houston in that title game. I just feel like South Dakota State is going to keep it close, and it's going to keep Iowa State on its heels. I still think Iowa State win, though. It's just... I still like Iowa State in this one, but I would not be surprised at all if South Dakota State just come out of nowhere and just make this a real game that, Iowa State doesn't want to play. Okay, we'll go back up for the top of the bracket for the round of 32. UConn Northwestern. Here's the thing with UConn. If you're going to beat them, I believe it's going to be either your first game, so the first round, the Sweet 16, or the Final Four. I think it is going to be very difficult to prepare for this UConn team on 48 hours notice with the plays they run. I think it's going to be a very difficult challenge. If anybody can do it, that would just be huge, given that Northwestern's not going to have enough UConn advance here. San Diego State Auburn, that could be a potentially very good game. I like both teams here. I think Auburn's the better team. I kind of explained they're the more hot team as of late. And if the only thing you need to know about March is the hot teams win, that is your hot team right there, and that is Auburn. Now, South Dakota State, or San Diego State, I should say, can make this a game 100%. I like Auburn prevailing here. BYU, Illinois. This is an interesting matchup because both teams have different styles of play. BYU a little bit slower. Illinois a more up-tempo team. In this game, I think the slower works because if you can shut down Illinois and you can, run the game your way, and Illinois is not running up the court, scoring in 2 seconds, defensive stop, going up the court, all that fun stuff. If BYU can slow down this game, I really like their chances of winning. I see them advancing to the Sweet 16 here. Drake, Iowa State. Listen, I like both teams. I talked about DeVries. He's a great shooter for Drake. Iowa State, very hot right now. I like Iowa State advancing just for that reason alone, just because they are the hot team right now, and I just don't see anything stopping them at this moment. Sweet 16, we are now in Boston. We are at the TD Garden. It is going to be UConn up against Auburn. This is going to be a very pro-UConn crowd. this may be the toughest game that UConn will play this tournament if they get to this stage, going up against Auburn. If both teams get to this stage, obviously, I think this might be one of the toughest games UConn plays. This could be the game where they fall and we officially have a new national champion coming up. But I still like UConn advancing. They've been so dominant this year. I don't see anybody stopping them. BYU, Iowa State. We have a battle of Big 12 teams. Obviously, they've played this year. Iowa State is the better team here. I like them to advance to the Elite Eight. So this is the first Elite Eight that we have set, and that is going to be UConn and Iowa State. So here is your look at what we have so far with this bracket. We have UConn and Iowa State locked in to the Elite Eight. So let's go find two more members to add to this Elite Eight group. Let's go to the South. You have Houston going up against Longwood, the Lancers, in the first round. Houston, they had a shot at getting that number 1 overall seed. They obviously lose to Iowa State badly in the national title, or in the Big 12 title game, I should say. Longwood, they play up tempo enough that I could see potentially something happening here. Houston is just too good, though. They advance here. Nebraska, Texas A&M, the 8-9 game. Now, Nebraska is one of the funnest players to watch in college basketball. That is Kelsey Tominaga. He is the Steph Curry of Japan, as people have called him. He is just such a great basketball shooter. And for that reason, I'm picking Nebraska to win here. Wisconsin, James Madison. This is the first alert of a potential bracket buster. We've talked about on the show. The title is obviously Bracket Buster Breakdown. Here is your first bracket buster. That is James Madison. Wisconsin, they're coming off that tough loss in the Big Ten title game. Kind of like I said with Illinois, fatigue going to play a factor here. James Madison just cruised through the Sun Belt tournament. They obviously have the win against Michigan State to start the year. This has been a very, very good James Madison team. I like the upset here. I see them advancing to the round of 32. The Duke Blue Devils going up against the Vermont Catamounts. Vermont, they're always in this tournament. They always win the America East. It just seems like they can never get anything done here. For that reason, I like Duke to advance. I don't think this Duke team is exceptionally great, but they'll do enough to get past Vermont in this first round. Texas Tech going up against NC State. NC State just won 5 games in 5 days to win the ACC to make their way to this tournament. They would not have been here if they did not win. Going up against a good Texas Tech team. This obviously is not the Texas Tech team of 2019 that went to the national championship game. This NC State team, they just went on that run. They're very hot as of late. I see that kind of ending here. I like Texas Tech to advance. Kentucky going up against Oakland University. Of course, Oakland University in Michigan, not California, as some people have confused it before. This Kentucky team has what it takes to win a national title. They got scores. They've got, the bench to, rest those scores that are going to keep this game where it needs to be. The big question is, can they... I won't say it's a big question if they can get past Oakland, because I think Oakland is going to give them a game. I think it's going to be a real challenge for Kentucky. This game being played in Pittsburgh, that's obviously a little bit closer to Oakland than it is to Lexington, Kentucky. But like I said, this Kentucky team has what it takes to win a national championship. Their biggest question is defense. I think their defense shows up enough today. for this game to advance to the second round. Moving on, it is going to be Florida in the 7 seed going up against the 10 seed, which will either be Boise State or Colorado, depending on the result of the play-in game on Wednesday night. And honestly, I don't think it matters. I'd like either of those teams to advance. I think either of those teams are better than this Florida team right now. They just lost one of their best players to a horrific injury in the SEC title game. Boise State feels like they're underseeded here. Colorado feels like they're seated where they should be, but I still think they're good enough to advance past Florida. And finally, for these round of 64 games in the South region, we have Marquette going up against Western Kentucky. Obviously, the biggest question is going to be Tyler Kolek's health. Will he play in this tournament? I don't think we're going to get an answer until game time, honestly, because I feel like we would know by now. But Shaka Smart keeping that very close to the chest. No matter what, I still like Marquette to win. I think they got the pieces enough to get at least past Western Kentucky without Tyler Kolek if need be. So moving on to the round of 32, we have Houston going up against Nebraska. Even though I do like Kelsey Tominaga and he can really shoot the lights out, I mean, Houston's just the better team here. Jamal Sneed, they have the better team here, and I see them advancing to the Sweet 16. James Madison, Duke. I think this is where the run ends for the Dukes, and it is Duke advancing to the Sweet 16. Duke just has too much talent to not get past this JMU team. If they don't get past them, I think you got to ask a lot of questions about John Shire, because this team, they should be beating Vermont, and they should be beating JMU. That is, yeah. They should be beating these teams. Texas Tech, Kentucky. Like I said, this Kentucky team has what it takes to win the national title. Going up against a Texas Tech team that is not afraid to slow it down, and they are very much not afraid to speed it up. I have a feeling that this, Kentucky team can go a long ways in this tournament, so I like them advancing here. You have the winner of the play-in game, which obviously will be Boise State or Colorado, going up against Marquette still. This going up against a Marquette team that may or may not have Tyler Kolek. I still like Marquette to advance because I think they're just the better team here. Now we have, in the Sweet 16, we have Houston and Duke. Houston, like I said, Duke has the better talent to beat JMU, the better talent to beat Vermont. They don't have the better talent to beat Houston. I like Houston to advance here. And then Kentucky, Marquette. The most played game in NCAA tournament history. These two teams have met up more than any other two teams have met up in the NCAA tournament. If Tyler Kolek is healthy and playing in this game in Dallas, South regions in Dallas, if he is healthy and playing, I like Marquette in this game. But also you got to factor in, if this is his first game that he's playing and he misses the first 2 rounds, then you got a lot of rust. I'm going to take Kentucky here just because I don't know the health of Tyler Kolek. If I knew the health, this could potentially be different here. I still like Kentucky here. So that is your second Elite 8 set. So we were going to add 2 more teams to this bracket. It is going to be Houston and Kentucky as they advance on to the Elite 8. It is now time to go to the Midwest region, and this region is just, it's an absolute disaster if we're honest. I am just scared of this region because I don't trust any of these teams here. Purdue going up against the winner of Montana State and Grambling State. Grambling State making their first ever tournament appearance, so congrats to them. I don't think it's happening again this year. If it does, there's got to be a lot of conversations around Matt Painter because there's just no way you can lose to a 16 seed twice in 2 years. Give me Purdue to advance, just please, because if not, that is a disaster for the Big Ten if that happens. TCU, Utah State. Now, TCU, they had a good season. Their out-of-conference record was great. They just didn't play anybody in the out-of-conference, which leads them to this position of being in the 8-9 game. So, obviously, a lot of interesting things happening there. Utah State, they played a grueling schedule in the Mountain West. This Mountain West was very good this year. I don't love that TCU really hasn't played a ton of talent out of conference this year. You can play in conference all you want, but kind of those out of conference games, you kind of can figure out a little bit about your team, which is why I like Utah State in this one. Gonzaga, McNeese State. McNeese State led by Will Wade. He is a great coach for this team. I mean, what a turnaround. He has McNeese State sitting at 30-3. A lot of people have this as a bracket buster, but my mindset is when a lot of people have it, that means it's not going to happen. So you got to back off from it. I like Gonzaga in this one just for that reason, but I could very much see McNeese State putting up, 80 or 90 on this Gonzaga team because this Gonzaga team isn't that great. Kansas, Samford, the Bulldogs, winners of the SoCon, going up against the Jayhawks, who have not had a great season. They lost in the second round of the Big 12 tournament because they had a lot of injuries. And we still don't know the health of some of these players. So this could become a very, very difficult test for Kansas because Samford like to play up tempo. And if you can't keep up with them, it may be over. Given that, I like Samford in this game because if Kansas is not healthy, I very much love Samford. But I don't love that we're keeping injuries such a secret right now. I get that it's kind of mental game planning, all that. But for filling out a bracket, I need to know if players are healthy or not. That's all I'd like to know. So give me Samford in advance. We'll have a battle of the Bulldogs in the round of 32. The South Carolina Gamecocks go up against the Oregon Ducks, who won the Pac-12. They were not going to make this tournament if they did not win it. They are going up against the Oregon or South Carolina, obviously. South Carolina, I really don't know what to say about them because they had a good year. I think they were very much overrated, though. I mean, it's just disgusting, honestly, because they had a good year, but I don't think they're that great. Oregon, on the other hand, I think they're hot enough right now to get a win. Dana Altman never lost a first-round game as head coach of Oregon. I like that stat. Give me the Ducks. The Creighton Blue Jays going up against the Akron Zips. Akron has never won a tournament game, going up against a Creighton team that went to the Elite Eight last year. They're trying to get that one step further into the Final Four. They returned a lot of starters this year. They lost early in the Big East tournament. They lost to Providence on Thursday. I like the vibe around this Creighton team. To me, they kind of feel a little bit like UConn last year. I like Creighton to advance here because, they have enough rest, but they still have a lot of talent on this team. I think it's easily enough to get past Akron. We get down Texas going up against the winner of the play-in game on Tuesday night, Virginia and Colorado State. If Virginia wins this game, it is going to be a travesty, honestly, because they don't deserve to be in this tournament. Their basketball is just so awful to watch. I don't want to watch that in this tournament. Yet they're in the play-in game against the Colorado State team. I still think Colorado State win that one, which means they would go up against Texas. I like Texas in that battle. I think Texas advances no matter who they play. If they play Virginia, then I think there can be a case made for Virginia just because of the disgusting basketball they play. But I like Texas to advance. Tennessee going up against the St. Peter's Peacocks. They are in the tournament for the first time since their Elite Eight run in 2022. Is it going to happen again? I don't know. The St. Peter's team, they're not going to the Elite Eight. I can tell you that. But I think that they keep it close with Tennessee and things get really interesting near the end. But I think we set up for a Rick Barnes battle in the round of 32. I think Tennessee advance here. Moving back up top, Purdue going up against Utah State. This is another game. If Purdue loses, we kind of have a lot of conversations to be had. They need to win. This bracket is set up perfectly for them. Give me Purdue to advance. The battle of the Bulldogs between Samford and Gonzaga. I like Gonzaga to advance here. I just think they have more talent. Oregon going up against Creighton. The Blue Jays, like I said, this team just trying to take that next step forward. They return a lot of starters from last year. I like Creighton to advance here. And in the Rick Barnes battle, of course, Rick Barnes led Texas to a Final Four in 2003. He's trying to lead Tennessee to a Final Four now. In this battle, I like Texas. Tennessee has had trouble in this tournament the past few years. They've always fallen out a lot earlier than they should have. This kind of feels like another year that could happen, because if Dalton Connect is off, this team is screwed. This team is not good without him, and if he has an off game, it's just over. So that could happen against St. Peter's. It could happen against Texas. Who knows? It might not happen until the Final Four. You never know. But I like Texas to advance here. I just think the matchup is much better for them to advance. So we got a Sweet 16 battle of Purdue and Gonzaga. I won't go as far as saying if Purdue loses now, there's got to be conversations, because one seeds lose in the Sweet 16 all the time. They're going up against a Gonzaga team, though, that isn't great. They kind of got a lucky draw. I like Purdue to advance here. They make it to the Elite Eight. Creighton, Texas. This is a tough game because I like both teams. I think both teams can go on deep runs in March. I think Creighton's the better team here. I like them to advance to the Elite Eight to face off against this Purdue team. So we are going to have another two teams added to our Elite Eight bracket, and that is Purdue and Creighton. We only have one region left to get those last two teams. Let's go to the region, and that is the West region. This one is being played in Los Angeles. We're going to start off at the top, as always. It's going to be North Carolina, the number one seed, the fourth number one seed, going up against the winner of Tuesday's game between Wagner and Howard. I almost said Hofstra there. This is Howard. North Carolina is going to win this game. But let me just mention, if Wagner wins on Tuesday, I think Wagner gives them a game for the first half. I don't think they end up winning, but I think they have enough to at least make it a game for 20 minutes. I think the second half, North Carolina pulls out. They win easy. But I like Wagner to maybe a first half line play there, because I think that they can keep it close for a little while. Mississippi State, the 8th seed out of the SEC, they just had a run to the SEC semifinals and then just got beaten by Auburn. Going up against a Michigan State team that is not hot. They are the opposite of hot. They are as cold can be as of late. They honestly probably should have been lower in the bracket. Just shooting has not been there for this team the past 6 games, it feels like. Mississippi State, the end of their regular season wasn't great, but obviously they made it to the SEC semifinals. I like them to continue here. They're the hotter team of the two right now. Both teams aren't that hot, but like I said, Mississippi State just went on a run in the SEC tournament that could propel them to a little bit of a run here in the NCAA tournament. Michigan State, I don't see that happening. St. Mary's, the 5 seed, going up against the 12 seed Grand Canyon, the winners of the WAC. Bryce Drew, the coach of Grand Canyon. It seems like Grand Canyon have gotten here the past few years. They just could never get over that hump. Randy Bennett, on the other hand, just has been an outstanding coach at St. Mary's. It finally feels like this is the year he's kind of destined for a run. I like St. Mary's to advance in this one. Alabama going up against Charleston. Charleston was everybody's pick for Cinderella last year when they were going up against San Diego State. Only for San Diego State to make a run and go to the national title game, of course. Everybody this year not so high on Charleston. So could this potentially be the year Charleston makes that Cinderella run? I'm not ruling it out, but I still will not bet against a Nate Oates coach team in March. Give me Alabama to advance here. Clemson going up against the New Mexico Lobos, who won the Mountain West. It seemed like that they either had to win or they were going to be out of the tournament. This New Mexico team is very good. I think Clemson have been overrated a lot this year. I don't love this matchup for them. I think New Mexico is the one to advance here. Baylor, Colgate. Colgate is here every year because they win the Patriot League every year. And they put up a game for about a half, and then it just completely dissipates, and whoever they're playing goes on a run, wins the game. That's exactly what's going to happen again. Baylor wins this. I really like this Baylor team this year. I think Scott Drew has built a very, very good team at Baylor. Obviously, it wasn't enough to win the Big 12, but I still think it could be enough to make a run here in March. Dayton, Nevada in the 7-10 game. Honestly, I hate Dayton here. I don't think that they honestly should have made the tournament. Just looking at their schedule this year and how it ended up playing out, it's not great. Dayton just hasn't been good. They pick on their opponents. If obviously the A10 doesn't have the strongest of competitions. Now, obviously, they lost in the quarterfinals of the A10 tournament. But, I mean, they also have losses like to Loyola Chicago, George Mason, VCU, Richmond. Now, of course, most of those teams finished in the top 4 of the A10. But here's the thing with that, though. They all lost in their first games they played in the A10 tournament. So, if they should have made the tournament, they should have been a play-in team. I don't think that they should be a 7 seed, let alone, here. I mean, they did play Northwestern this year. They did play St. John's. They beat St. John's, lost to Northwestern. They lost to Houston. They beat Cincinnati. So their 2, quad 1 wins were against teams that didn't make the tournament. And their other 2 quad 1 games were losses to teams that made the tournament. Nevada, I think that they're a little bit of a sleeper here. I like Nevada to advance. Arizona, looking to, avenge their loss last year to Princeton in the first round, going up against the Long Beach State team. They fired their coach last Monday. They let him coach the rest of the year. thinking that it would be over in a game or two. They only went on and won the whole thing. They are now in the tournament with a fired coach. This very much does seem like a setup for Arizona just to get blown out of the water here. I don't think Long Beach State have the talent that Princeton did last year. I like Arizona to advance. Moving up, North Carolina, they are going up against Mississippi State here. I think either Mississippi State or Michigan State could give North Carolina a game because North Carolina I don't think is that great. I don't think they were deserving of the 1 seed. I honestly think it should have been Iowa State with the performance they put on in that Big 12 title game. I think they should have been the 4th 1 seed, but yet they sit as the 2 seed in the toughest region of this whole thing. I like North Carolina to advance. I don't see the run ending yet. I can't see them losing to Mississippi State or Michigan State. St. Mary's going up against Alabama. Like I said, this could be St. Mary's year to finally make a run. It really does feel like this might be the year that they can make an Elite Eight, maybe even sneak into a Final Four because this region, I think, does play out well for them. Alabama has a lot of dudes. They got a lot of great players. I like Alabama just over the edge here against St. Mary's. New Mexico going up against Baylor. I think this is where the dream ends for Richard Pitino's New Mexico Lobos. I like Baylor to advance. Arizona, Nevada. I really do. I contemplated on this one a lot because I could see it going both ways. There's something about this Arizona team I don't like. I feel like they're a bit fraudulent. That's why I like Nevada to advance here. I think Nevada find a way somehow, some way to get past this Arizona team. Sweet 16 time, we have North Carolina going up against Alabama. I think this is where North Carolina ends here. Like I said, I can't trust this North Carolina team. I don't know what it is. I just can't trust them. I like Alabama to win this game. Baylor, Nevada, I like Baylor to advance. They're just the much better team here. So we have our last Elite Eight set, and that is going to be Baylor and Alabama. So now we have 8 teams remaining. We only have 4 spots in the Final Four. One's got to win, one's got to lose. Starting off with the East. Your East champion, I believe, is going to be UConn. If this game was being played in the Sweet 16, I would like Iowa State in it. I think Iowa State could prepare for UConn on a week's notice. On 2 days' notice, I don't think they can do it. I don't think anybody can stop UConn on 2 days' notice. UConn advances to the Final Four for the second year straight. Houston, Kentucky. This is just a monumental matchup here. Houston just trying to... I know they made the Final Four in 2021, but it feels like they're trying to get over a hump here. Is this finally the year that they get over that hump? They make a run finally to maybe even a national title? I think so. I think they make the Final Four. I think they're better than this Kentucky team, but because, like I said, Kentucky doesn't play defense. If Kentucky even had a little bit of semblance of defense here, I think that they win this game. They have the shooters for it. I like Houston better in this game just because of the defensive capabilities. Purdue, Creighton. Listen, it's going to take a lot for somebody to stop Zach Edey. I think Greg McDermott's men can find a way to stop Zach Edey, and that is going to be a combination of players that Greg McDermott could use for these Blue Jays. I like Creighton to advance to their first ever Final Four. And finally, in the West region, we have an Alabama team going up against a Baylor team. I said I really like this Baylor team. Alabama, I think, kind of just got a little bit lucky with the draw, just a tiny bit. Baylor's the better team. I like this as our Final Four. We have UConn from the Big East. We have Houston from the Big 12. We have Creighton from the Big East, and we have Baylor from the Big 12. It's a Big East, Big 12 battle in Phoenix/Glendale, but these are two great matchups here. I really like these matchups. If these four teams get to Phoenix, honestly, any of them can win. I think all four of these teams have national championship level teams with them right now. UConn, Baylor. It was very, very tough for me to pick this one because I think both teams are evenly matched. I think Baylor has just the slightest of edges over UConn. Like, I'm talking about millimeters of difference here. Listen, I love UConn. I personally have had money on UConn since November. It just doesn't feel like this year is the year to go back-to-back. I like Baylor advancing to the national title game. I think Scott Drew finds a way to coach this team up to get past Dan Hurley's men. Baylor advances to the national title game. Houston, Creighton. I said Houston's got a lot of good players. They have a great coach in Kelvin Sampson. Will the lights be too bright for actually both of these teams? Because I don't think there's anybody left on this Houston team from 2021. There may be one or two players. This Creighton team's obviously never been to the Final Four, I should say, let alone the national title. I like Creighton advancing here. There's just something's telling me this team's making a run this year, and it may end up in a national title. I really don't know, but I like what Creighton has done this year. I think McDermott, this is one of the best teams he's had. I like them advancing here. So we have a Big 12 Big East battle for the national title. It is Baylor. It is Creighton. I think one of these teams is better than the other, just on paper and in play, and I think it's Baylor. I think Baylor ends up being your 2024 national champions. That would be 2 and 4 years. Obviously, they won the 2021 bubble version. This would be Scott Drew's second title. I think they got the players to make a run. And if they get to Phoenix, I feel like they're winning it. I really like Baylor this year. I think they find a way to win the national title this year. So that is officially my March Madness predictions for 2024. What a run it's going to be. We have some really good games coming up. Hopefully a lot of good games in the future with potential matchups. Make sure you stay locked in here to the Nick Burt Sports Network. We are going to have coverage through it all on Bracket Buster Breakdown. So that is going to wrap it up for this 2024 men's tournament preview. Thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across this video, click like, click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. We'll be back throughout this tournament. The women's predictions coming soon. It's going to be all basketball here. All basketball, all the time. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again very soon for another episode of Bracket Buster Breakdown.